How's it going? Thad Brown here with you on the Endgame on a Monday. Happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody. Hope you had a great weekend. Most of you probably celebrated the holiday over the last Saturday and Sunday. The day is actually tomorrow, so we will be green and white in the studio here on this Monday. As always, a lot to get to. We'll talk about the Bills, some defensive back additions over the weekend, what that means for that part of the team. And, of course, we'll hit on the tournament. Brackets are out. Hopefully you got your pool all set. I threw in my first pool last night. I'm sure there'll be 2 or 3 or 4, too many to admit, coming down the road here for me the next few days. But the tournament's always a great time of year. Is it too much right now? And does the NCAA want to break or fix something that's not broken? We'll address that later on in the show as well. Caleb Carr will be in to do You See This at about 3:40 or so. We'll probably talk about the brackets a little more then. But let's start with the Bills. And since I was last here, the Bills did add a couple of safeties, essentially. Number one is C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who is most recently of the Bears. Actually, with the Bears last year, he played a lot more slot than safety. But I think with Buffalo, he will most likely be the field safety, the free safety to pair with Cole Bishop. Now, free safety, strong safety isn't exactly the kind of specific delineation NFL safeties get these days. Guys are a little more positionless and can do more things, especially Cole Bishop. It really feels like Cole Bishop has the kind of ceiling to where he can be a playmaker all over the field. But you want to have someone who, I think when you want to pair a safety with Bishop, the guy you want is someone who's a little more of a center fielder, someone who's going to play deep middle, patrol the back end, and be an asset down the field. And C.J. Gardner-Johnson had 6 interceptions the last time he played that role in Philadelphia 2 years ago. Because, again, last year with the Bears, at least the team he played the second half of the year, the team he played with, Gardner-Johnson was primarily a slot, a lot like what Taron Johnson did with the Bills in Buffalo's 4-3. So what the Bears did defensively last year is very similar to the McDermott scheme, with Gardner-Johnson playing the Taron Johnson role. Now, Gardner-Johnson's a solid tackler. I don't think he has the tackling desire that Taron Johnson did. So to me, I don't think he's ideal playing that role for what his skill set is. He'll do it. He'll certainly get his nose dirty. But I think he's a little better off playing that free safety role. Now, this is not a guy who's an all-pro or who's going to totally reconfigure or change what the Bills look like on defense. This is going to be a solid player that can do some things down the field. He does bring an attitude, and he does bring a history of success. This is a guy that's played in 14 playoff games. Keep in mind, this is his, 7th team in 6 years. And somehow he constantly finds his way to the postseason. Did it last year with the Bears. 2 stints with Philadelphia will help. But he's not irrelevant when it comes to getting there. Like I said, the last time he played for the Eagles, they won a Super Bowl, and he had 6 interceptions. So the correlation between C.J. Gardner-Johnson and going to the playoffs is not nothing. Now, he's the free safety. In most cases where he's been, he's not even the first or second best guy in the secondary. But he's a pretty solidly talented guy. 28 years old. I think he turns 29 in November. So maybe getting towards the back end of his career, but this is still very much a functional player. So this fits with what the Bills have done in free agency so far, that they are finding guys who fill holes. This is what Brandon Beane has done consistently since he's come to Buffalo when it comes to his approach in the offseason. Free agency is almost never for finding stars. He's dabbled in it, Von Miller, obviously. You can make a trade, but I think trades are different than free agency. When you trade a draft pick, you're not just signing a player that someone got rid of for nothing. You're giving another team an asset in order to persuade them to give up an asset they would otherwise keep. I know that there are details. Obviously, DJ Moore had a giant contract, really wasn't fitting with Chicago. The Bears have other receivers that I think they like better. So there's a part of that where DJ Moore is an asset the Bears are just letting walk. But for the most part, when you trade for a guy, especially when you're trading a second-round pick, you're trading a guy that still has value in the league and I think in most cases, to the team that used to have him. So this goes back to Stephon Diggs, too. Stephon Diggs, when the Bills traded for him and sent a first-round pick to Minnesota, that's different than just signing someone in free agency, even though it happens at the same time. Signing guys in free agency, I think it is a mistake to expect those players to be game changers, to be elite-level players. They're being disposed of, to use a kind of brusque term for how free agency works. These players are being disposed of by another team. They don't even want them, right? They've had them for number of games, number of years, and I know contract plays into it, but at the end of the day, every single player who's a free agent is a free agent because that player's old team just flat out didn't want him. And I know that one man's treasure is another man's trash, that kind of thing. But I always take it seriously when an NFL team who has had a player, not just on the field on Sundays, but in-house, week after week after week, day after day, Monday through Saturday. You see how they prepare. You see how they get along in the locker room. You see how they watch film. You see how they respond to coaching. When a team says, we don't want this player, that to me always speaks volumes. Doesn't mean they can't play in the league. And sometimes it's relative to the role. Some teams don't want a player because that player had assets committed to them that were more attuned with being a number one or an elite player. They haven't done that. Doesn't mean you can't go somewhere else and be the third guy at your position and be helpful. But I think that the bottom line is the Bills have rarely approached free agency with the idea that you're going to find guys and it's going to totally change how your team looks. You're going to find the solution to all your problems. That's not what you get in free agency. In free agency, you get guys who plug holes. You look at your roster, you look at players who you didn't want to sign for any number of reasons, players who didn't work out for you, positions that weren't good enough last year. You look at the problem areas you have. And what the Bills have done, and what most teams I think tried to do, is you look at those problem areas and you just plug guys in that will not fix the problem area, but if there's a leak there, they will plug the leak. And Brandon Beane has talked about this year after year. This is what they do in free agency. They find guys to plug holes. Taron Johnson gets traded away. You have a hole at nickel. You sign D. Alford. Joey Bosa is off the team because you signed him to a one-year deal. He really didn't work as a run defender, so you signed Bradley Chubb, who should plug the hole of run defense at one edge position. You lose Mitch Trubisky. You got to find a backup quarterback. Kyle Allen will plug a hole. Not sexy, but he will plug a hole. Essentially, the Bills lost their center, right? I know it's the same guy, but Connor McGovern was going to be a free agent. You signed Connor McGovern back. I know that's a bigger contract, but again, you are plugging a hole. You are fixing a problem at center. That's what you do in free agency, because the big name players, the players that you find more often than not that will change the outlook of your team, those are guys you draft. That's what the Bills need to do with their first and third and fourth, fifth, whatever picks. That's where you change your team, especially longer term, but you can do it in year one if you hit on guys. There's always going to be a number of guys who come out of the draft, most years, maybe not this year, different discussion. But the draft is where you really change your team. And the Bills have done it the right way most years. You find guys who fill a hole. C.J. Gardner-Johnson will fill a hole. He will fit in nicely next to Cole Bishop, and he will operate as a free safety that can make some plays and that you can trust. Now, here's the thing with C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Like I said, this is his seventh team in 6 years. He was drafted by the Saints, played his first 3 seasons in the NFL with the Saints. Since then, since 2021, C.J. Gardner-Johnson has not played more than one full season with any team. It was Philly, and then it was Detroit, and then it was Philly again, and then it was Houston for 3 games last year, and then it was the Bears, and now it's the Bills. Why is that? Well, there's a number of reasons. And let's go back into the story at least about why Gardner Johnson only lasted 3 days or 3 games with the Texans. There were a number of scheme issues. He was not picking up the DeMarco, Ryan, what was his first name? DeMarco, no, it's not. D'Amico? I'm totally blanking on this. And my computer is locking up here. We're going to get this right. D'Amico Ryans, right? Yeah, D'Amico Ryans. Okay. Driving me nuts. C.J. Gardner-Johnson was not connecting with the D'Amico Ryans defense. And it came to a head, week 3, game is 10-10, they're playing the Jags. And there's a cover 0 blitz that's called. So Kamari Lassiter and C.J. Gardner-Johnson have the 2 receivers on the left. And the way the story goes, apparently, C.J. Gardner-Johnson was supposed to take the first receiver that went outside. Kamari Lassiter takes the receiver that goes, C.J. Gardner-Johnson was supposed to take the first receiver that goes inside. Kamari Lassiter takes the first receiver that goes outside. This is a very typical coverage in the NFL. Instead of saying man on man, I'm going to go where that man does. We're going to make it easy on ourselves. I got outside, you got inside, and whichever guy goes that way, you have him. And then there's other variations off of that. If both guys go inside, then one guy has the first man to go inside, and then the other man just takes the second guy wherever he has to go. But in this particular play, C.J. Gardner-Johnson was supposed to take the first receiver who went inside. He did not. He took the first receiver that went outside, and that left Kamari Lassiter chasing in coverage. It turned into a 46-yard play, which led to the game-winning touchdown on the next play, and then C.J. Gardner-Johnson was gone. This is a guy that quickly wears out his welcome. This is a guy that has been a problem in multiple locker rooms. He has gone to the Super Bowl twice with the Eagles, and both times the Eagles have said, thank you, but goodbye afterward. And this is a really good organization. Really, all of these teams that he's played for, Philly, Detroit, Philly, Houston, and Chicago. Chicago with Ben Johnson. These are all upper-level organizations in the NFL. All have taken a spin with C.J. Gardner-Johnson. All have decided he wasn't worth it for the next season, or sooner, as in the case with the Texans. Does this mean it won't work in Buffalo? I don't know. He also has clearly gone to many playoff games, and these teams have consistently, that he's played for, gone to the postseason. So that's a good thing. But what the most interesting part of C.J. Gardner-Johnson is to me is what it means for who the Bills are now. Because C.J. Gardner-Johnson probably doesn't fit in a Sean McDermott locker room. Sean McDermott, as we heard from the moment he arrived until the day he was fired, always valued the culture in the locker room. And this is not to say Joe Brady doesn't value it. But Joe Brady, I think, is showing you with C.J. Gardner-Johnson that he's willing to maybe take a few more chances with that culture. I don't think Sean McDermott would want Gardner-Johnson in his locker room, simply because he doesn't want the harmonious apple cart to be upturned. Now, sometimes that can be a good thing. Sometimes a little shock to the system helps. But this is how Sean McDermott wanted to operate. He wanted a locker room that did not have characters like a Gardner-Johnson. Joe Brady seems to be okay with that. Better or worse? I don't know. I'm fascinated. But it is the first kind of indication of how Joe Brady might be willing to run this locker room. I think the positive spin of the Joe Brady era, from what we've seen and how the offensive players at least have talked about Joe Brady, is that he is very much a player's coach. Guys get along with him. The offensive players could not wait for the Bills defenders to get a better look of what Joe Brady was as a person and as a coach. I think he's going to be open to more stuff. I think he's going to be more of a player's coach. As much as the players loved Sean McDermott, and there was nothing but the highest of praise for the type of locker room Sean McDermott operated when he was in Buffalo. But he was still kind of an old school guy. Remember, even Trey White this year was laughing about how Sean McDermott would open up the reins with some things, let guys be a little more free, how McDermott had transitioned from a guy who had a good culture, but a guy who seemed to be more of a hardline old school coach when he started into someone who was more open, more player friendly. And I think that transition is going to continue with Joe Brady, that Brady's going to go even further to the player friendly side. And that can be good. If you have veterans who are responsible for themselves, who can run a locker room on their own, who don't need the coach necessarily to be cracking the whip of discipline, then having more player freedom can make the locker room and the workplace essentially more enjoyable for guys to go to. And don't discount how important it is for these guys to enjoy the place they work. Think about where you work. Do you like being there? Probably some places you did more than others. The ones you like going to, you probably did a better job at because you were in a better mood when you got there. That's not anything different that happens in an NFL locker room. So this can be a good thing. Now, on the flip side, the negative part of it is you get to a point where the inmates are kind of running the asylum, and if guys are doing whatever they want and getting outside the rails of discipline, well, then you got problems. And C.J. Gardner-Johnson is a guy who will operate outside the rails of discipline to the point where he even understands it. I got a kick out of listening to his press conference where he said, I'm kind of a guy that toes the line. I know how to go up to the line. Sometimes I'll go over the line. C.J. Gardner-Johnson knows who he is. And at age 28, in year, I think 7, it's going to be for him, he's very familiar with how he operates in the NFL. And I respect that, even if it can rub some people the wrong way. D'Amico Ryans apparently being near the top of the list. Again, it's not necessarily better or worse. We'll find out if it's going to be better or worse. But sitting here right now, it's just going to be new. And the fact that the Bills are embracing a guy like Gardner-Johnson, or at this point just signing him, I don't know how much they're embracing him, is fascinating. Because no matter what you thought of Sean McDermott, one of the things that was unassailable about the Sean McDermott era in Buffalo was the locker room culture. The players consistently talked about how much they loved the guys and how important it was to play for the guy next to you. You saw the number of players who would leave and come back. That speaks volumes. I say in the NFL all the time, don't listen to what people, players or coaches say, listen to what they do. And players who played in Buffalo for Sean McDermott wanted to come back for more. And it was going to be a difficult piece of navigation for the Bills going to a new coach. What do you do with a locker room culture? Because this is something that everybody loved. But Joe Brady can't just go in there and run Sean McDermott's culture. There's nothing that an NFL player or any professional athlete will see through faster than trying to not be who you are. Joe Brady's going to have to be who he is. And that means a different culture than Sean McDermott. And from what we've seen from the players who talked about the Sean McDermott culture for 9 years, topping that was going to be really hard. So how does Joe Brady go about doing that? Well, I guess if you want to make a conclusion from C.J. Gardner-Johnson, there's going to be a little more openness, a little more ability for players to maybe push the boundaries of what is appropriate in a locker room. And I think, it fits Joe Brady, who he's been so far. So again, you want a coach who's going to be authentic. This, to me, feels authentic for Joe Brady. I don't know if it is, but it feels that way. And 2, this is still largely a veteran team. Josh Allen, number 1, runs the locker room. He's the guy. He's the leader. He's the one everyone answers to. But it's not just him. Deion Dawkins is very much a locker room lawyer. And that term can be used a number of different ways. In this way, he is a guy who's in charge of that locker room. And both of those guys are high character guys that are going to keep teammates in line for the most part. And you've got Spencer Brown, Connor McGovern, offensive linemen who have been there. Khalil Shakir is getting to that point. Dawson Knox you can put. There's enough veterans, certainly on the offensive side of the ball, that you're not dropping C.J. Gardner into a rudderless or railless locker room. This is a locker room that can probably handle a guy like Gardner-Johnson. Seeing if it actually works out that way will be interesting. No matter what, I can sit here and tell you about a coach's plan or his culture. If he loses 3 in a row, all bets are off. But this is, at least, like I said, an interesting window into what appears to be the Joe Brady take on what his locker room is going to look like. And I've thought a few different times that Sean McDermott's choir boy approach to building a roster can be limiting. And a guy like Gardner Johnson, like I said, is probably off the table. Not anymore, apparently. Does that make it better? I don't know. But it is going to be fascinating because it's a new era. And Joe Brady, going back to the combine, made it clear this is not year 10, this is year 1. This is a new era. C.J. Gardner Johnson is part of that new era. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I like it, but it is interesting to see how different things will be under Joe Brady. And it's a tough ask for him, too, because he's stepping into a team where they've been to the playoffs, 7, 8 years in a row? I've lost track at this point. And he has to continue that tradition of success, but he has to do it in his own way. Because, again, players will see through Coach BS faster than anything. So Joe Brady has to do it his way. And we will see if his way works. But his way apparently is going to include guys like Gardner Johnson, which, again, like I said, I've thought a few different times, I wonder if this team would be better with a guy like that. And again, when you throw him into this locker room with people in the locker room already that are in charge, like you throw C.J. Gardner Johnson in Cleveland or the Jets, locker rooms with, now the Jets have made an effort this year to bring in new leadership. Maybe they're not the best example anymore. But places where you don't have established veterans who instantly command respect, then Gardner Johnson is probably more likely to cause a problem. But in Buffalo, I think he's a guy that could work a little bit better. Now, to be fair, he wore out his welcome quickly in Philly, Detroit, and Philly, 3 straight years, and you don't get much better organizations than those 2 places. So we'll see. But it is a fun experiment is kind of the word I can use because I'm watching it from afar. Joe Brady obviously doesn't want to be experimenting. He wants to be doing things he thinks works, but it's just a different approach. Speaking of the secondary here, let me quickly talk about Geno Stone, the other safety the Bills signed over the weekend. And with Stone, this is a guy who I think likely will be the 3rd safety. He was a starter the last 2 years in Cincinnati, played every game, but on a bad defense. Now, I don't know how much of that is on him, how much of that is on what's around him. I'm sure those 2 things are not totally unrelated. But I don't expect Stone to be a guy that comes in and someone the Bills want to count on day after day. Gardner Johnson seems to be that guy as a safety. The thing about Stone, he can play some defense, or some special teams, But the Bills the last couple years have gotten burned by not having quality safety depth. I only need to go back to the Denver game with Darnell Savage giving up a touchdown at the end of the first half to underline why. But it wasn't just that. It was playing Damar Hamlin, essentially a full season not too long ago. It was not having Cole Bishop ready to go because he was hurt his rookie year and having to be a big part of that playoff game against the Chiefs 2 years ago, the AFC Championship. So this has been a spot, even Jordan Hancock last year, the Bills were so down bad once Jordan Poyer got hurt. First of all, they were so down bad when it came to safety depth that Jordan Poyer had to play. But then when Poyer got hurt, obviously by then you're down to your 4th safety. Not many teams have quality 4th safeties. But regardless, the Bills have too many times the last couple of years been unprepared to handle safety injuries. Or at the very least, when they've come, those spots have come back to bite them. Geno Stone is another swing at trying to get better with your safety depth. Now, like I said, even though if he was a starter in Cincinnati, I shouldn't say, let me start over here. As a starter the last 2 years, you feel good about him as your 3rd guy, right? He's not going to start for you. He only starts for you if you have to start him. But if he was really that good as a starter, he probably would have gone out and found a starting job somewhere. So if you have to turn to him long-term or in big spots, does it matter? We'll see. I think he is a better option, at least, though, than Mike Edwards and Kareem Jackson, who the Bills have swung at safety with the last couple seasons. I like Stone in terms of his ability to be a depth step-in piece. I don't think many teams out there have great 3rd safeties. This is not a spot that you go and spend a lot of money on. Safety already is probably, it might be undervalued in terms of how it should be valued, but this is not a priority position. Edge rusher, corner, wide receiver, tackle, quarterback, anyone on the offensive line in some cases are more valued than safety. So when we're talking about the backup there, how many resources should you be committing to your third safety? Probably not a lot. But it is a spot, like I said, that has hurt the Bills in some big games the last couple seasons. So Stone, although he's a third safety, if you look at how the Bills' last couple seasons have ended, this guy is someone that ends up having a big say in that. So I do think it's, like I said, it's a better option than the Bills have trotted out as the safety number 3 the last couple years. But I don't know. I don't know if this is the guy that I want to be counting on over and over. And again, I don't know how many teams even have that as a third safety. And maybe the Bills should be putting more resources into this guy. Again, Stone, I think, is a guy that has had more. Well, I shouldn't say that. I mean, Mike Edwards did come off as a third safety on a really good team. So I think Mike Edwards on paper and Geno Stone aren't too disparate. But I do think Stone is a better swing at addressing this position, this spot, this role that has really burned the Bills the last couple years. One more thing with the defense here. So Jim Leonhard comes in to take over as the defensive coordinator. And I think there's a little bit of an assumption that Leonhard is just going to roll in and everything's going to be better. And it may be, because this is a pretty talented defensive mind for the Bills. A guy whose defenses at Wisconsin were heavily studied by NFL coaches who showed really good versatility, certainly had a high level of success at Wisconsin. So that in terms of being a college coordinator, you pretty much have checked every box that you want to check with Jim Leonhard. And it's going to be a different defense too. It's going to be a whole lot more aggressive. And I know fans want that because Sean McDermott's defenses have been generally more passive. That's their game. McDermott's defense is keep everything in front of you, rally to the ball. We're not going to get beat deep. We're not going to give up the big play. We're going to make teams drive 14, 15 plays down the field. That's how McDermott defenses operated in general. And he was pretty good with it too. Jim Leonhard's not going to be that. Jim Leonhard wants to attack. And if you need evidence, again, don't believe what Joe Brady and Jim Leonhard said. Believe what they do. Well, Jim Leonhard and Joe Brady went out and got C.J. Gardner-Johnson and D. Alford. D. Alford last year tied for third in quarterback pressures by defensive backs. He is a good blitzing nickel. C.J. Gardner-Johnson, not even playing a full season, had 6 quarterback pressures. Alford had 9. Now, yeah, the numbers in total are small. But like I said, Alford ranked tied for third in QB pressures, according to Pro Football Focus, by a defensive back with 9, and Gardner-Johnson had 6, which is a reasonably high number for a safety. And again, he played nickel, so he's more of a defensive back last year. Either way, those are 2 guys that signal to you this Bills team wants to be more aggressive. This Bills team wants to attack. And I know fans have been wanting to hear that because you get tired of seeing Sean McDermott sit back and run a rush 4 and play zone. And I understand it's frustrating, but it doesn't make it better. Jim Leonhard's defense is only going to succeed if the players within it are better than the players Sean McDermott had. That's the thing. You can bring in a new coach and a new philosophy, and some are slightly better than others. I've always thought that when it comes to coordinators, offensive or defensive, there might be 2 or 3 that really are transformative. You can name them on offense. Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, Ben Johnson. That might be it when it comes to really transformative offensive minds in the NFL. Defensively, maybe Wade Phillips was the last one. Brian Flores in Minnesota is probably the one right now. And that might be it. You could talk about scheme changes all you want. The players are the ones who are going to make the difference. So whether the Bills want to go conservative, zone, rally like Sean McDermott's defense, or whether they're going to go 3-4, attack, blitz like Jim Leonhard's defense, it don't matter if you don't have the players. The players make everything. And I think there's an assumption among the fans that this defense that Jim Leonhard has is going to be better than Sean McDermott's. Sean McDermott's defense has been pretty good over the last few years. I'll put it this way. Sean McDermott's defenses have a high floor relative to the talent on the field. Especially the last, I think, 23 and 25 the work Sean McDermott has done with injuries in many spots, crippling that defense, has been very high level. And expecting Jim Leonhard to walk in and be able to do a similar job, I don't think is fair to Jim Leonhard. I think people got to give Jim Leonhard a season or two to really get comfortable with operating this defense at an NFL level. This is not something that I think Jim Leonhard is going to be able to do year one, especially when he wants to do things in a significantly different way. Like I said, the players are the thing that's going to dictate how good this defense is. It's not going to be a defense that's going to have everybody that Jim Leonhard would probably prefer in year one. We've heard a lot already about how Jim Leonhard's he's not going to force a scheme on players. He's going to work with the players he's got. That doesn't mean he doesn't want or wouldn't prefer a different style of players. He probably would in general. It's going to take the Bills more than likely, more than one offseason to find guys who work. They're going to bring different players in. You've seen it in free agency. D. Alford, Bradley Chubb, Gardner Johnson. The Bills have already addressed a number of spots on defense in free agency. Doesn't mean they're all going to work or they're all going to work year one. So I think Bills fans need to be a level of patient with the Jim Leonhard transition. This is probably not going to be a defense in year one that's going to be better than what Sean McDermott did the year before. It's going to probably take some time for Leonhard to grow into the job a little bit, but more importantly, for the roster to grow into what he wants to do. Now, maybe Jim Leonhard is Ben Johnson, and he rolls in here as a transformative defensive mind. It's possible. His resume is very good. His reputation is even better. So it would not be out of the realm if Jim Leonhard is one of those next transformative minds. But it is not likely. More likely than not, he's going to be in the Joe Brady class of he's smart, he can get some things done. But he's not by himself changing how a team or an outlook or a defense operates. Well, I think it's going to be something that'll take a couple of years. And I think it's something that Bills fans need to give some time. I really think right now you could, post, I want to schedule a tweet almost for mid-January to where it says, well, Jim Leonhard looked good year one, but next year when he has all his guys, that's when the defense is really going to take off. That's what I think this is going to look like. I think you'll see differences for sure. You'll see improvements in some areas. I think the Bills defense will be more threatening to play because they're going to attack a lot more. But I don't know if it's necessarily going to be better. And I think it's going to take some time before you look at a Jim Leonhard defense and think of it as clearly better than what Sean McDermott had in Buffalo. Even if the McDermott defense was frustrating in its passivity and certainly frustrating with the number of points it gave up in playoff losses. Part of the reason you give a lot of points in the playoffs is because you're playing really good offenses. I mean, that's just how it goes. All right, we're going to take a break here. When we come back, talk a little more about the tournament, what's down the road in terms of March sports events, and maybe why is the NCAA and the NFL working a little too hard to give us more of its product? Caleb Carr is in after this. I'm Thad Brown. You're watching Rochester First. The kids all call it Rock 1. This is the Endgame. Thad Brown back with you here on the Endgame. Caleb Carr in a little early on this Monday. We'll get to UC this in a moment. We got a couple of good ones from this weekend. I got a great story that I'm dying to get your take on this. Okay. Just a wild story from European soccer. But it is March Madness week. Brackets are out. Caleb is a big college basketball guy.
It's my favorite time of the year.
So let's talk about that for a minute. Give me your reaction. It seemed like, and I didn't study the bracket. The only part of the bracket I studied was the Hofstra Alabama game in the 4-13 bracket, because my pride are about to ruin some Alabama fans.
You a Hofstra fan?
Oh, I went to Hofstra. So yeah.
Did you really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Speedy Claxton.
Well, now I got to pick them.
Speedy Claxton, who was their head coach, was a player my last 2 years there too. Nice kid, really quiet kid.
All right.
They went to the tournament 2 years after I left. And as someone who broadcast college basketball games for the school, missing out on going to the tournament, because you do that for free, was a tough one. Yeah. But good to see them back. in terms of the bracket, though, it seemed like in general, most people were happy with what the selection committee did this year.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, this was one of those years where the teams on the bubble weren't that great.
Right.
So it was pretty easy to distinguish. I mean, there have been years in the past where like you have 12 really good teams that all deserve to be in. Someone's not going to make it. But it wasn't really one of those years. I mean, the only teams that some people are trying to make an argue for are like Oklahoma and Auburn. But those are two SEC schools. SEC already had 10 schools in, and not saying that doesn't mean that means they don't deserve to get in, but it's really hard to find a spot for them. But Miami, Ohio made it in. There were some discrepancies about that. I mean, 31-0 in the regular season, you have to put them in.
But a play-in game too. I did raise my eyebrow at that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the ones where you look at metrics because of that. I mean, when you look at large teams, and Ken Pom is the main like metric that's used to look at how good a team is. All of the at-large teams were kind of like in a group at the top. Miami, Ohio was like 20 or 30 places below the last at-large team. So they were the lowest at-large team to get in on Ken Pom by far. So when you look at metrics and stuff and just who they played in the regular season, it makes sense that they're in a playing game. I think if they would have at least gone to the championship, the MAC championship, their conference championship, they probably would have been in without having to go to Dayton. But the fact that they lost round 1 to UMass raised some eyebrows. So.
And UMass didn't win the conference either. I think if UMass had rolled through and
then
you caught
maybe,
a juggernaut,
then maybe,
it would be different.
Yeah, but no. But they're in, so it's fine. There really aren't, when you look at the actual bracket, the only big things that people are arguing over are a couple like seeding lines. And that's only like, oh, this team should have been a 4 instead of a 5. Or, oh, this team should have like a lot of people are upset about the fact that St. John's and UConn are both in the East because there are only 3 Big East schools and they should have spread them out more. I mean, it's tough because if they play each other, which I believe would be in the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8 maybe, I think they would play each other in...
What number seeds are they?
They're 5 and 2. So they would play each other in the Elite 8. And if they did, that would be the third or fourth time that they've played each other this year, which a lot of people don't like. But I mean, it is what it is. I still think it would be a great matchup. So, but overall, the kind of overall look at the bracket is pretty good. Like a lot of people are happy with it.
And I don't care about Elite 8 for a conference rematch.
No, I don't. That's far enough out.
Exactly.
That's far enough out. Now, if it was like round of 32, then it's like, what are we doing?
Even Sweet 16.
Even Sweet 16 kind of makes it tough unless they like maybe didn't play at all during the regular season because some conferences don't play every team. But I'm okay with an Elite 8 matchup there.
Let me throw a topic of discussion that's made the rounds as it has done the last couple of years when it comes to the tournament, and we'll fold the NFL into this too. But there is talk about turning this tournament into a 76-team field going forward, and what that would mean, other than more schools get in, and Bruce Pearl would probably be happy because Auburn would be in right now, is that you would have, instead of 4 playing games, you'd have 12 because you got to knock 12 teams out to get down to 64 for Thursday, where the traditional start of the tournament has been. So if you're doing 12 games early, that means 6 on Tuesday and 6 on Wednesday before you go to Thursday and you play 16 and 16 those first 2 days. To me, that's too many. Like the first 4 right now, or whatever we're calling it, I barely watched that. Even with main teams in, I got it in on The Office. Exactly. Casual.
I mean, I get people don't like watching the 16 seeds, and those are more for your like really sweaty college basketball fans because it's only happened twice.
Or gamblers.
Yeah, or gamblers. Yeah. It's only a 16 seed has only taken down a 1 twice. So like it's probably not going to happen. It's most likely not going to happen. There's not really a point to watch those. But I argue those 11 v 11 games to get in the tournament are some of the biggest games of the tournament because an 11 seed always makes a run. It happens every single year that an 11 seed is going to make a run, and there's only 4 11 seeds in the round of 64. So of those 4 teams, 4 11 seeds playing in those first 4, more likely than not, one of those teams could go on a run. So I argue that those are some of the best games of the whole tournament. But
so when it comes to the discussion about 76 teams, though,
yes,
more likely than not, I've seen a couple different formats for this, but if you're going to have would it be 12 teams going in? You're probably talking about a lot of battles for a 14 seed, battles for a 15 seed.
Yeah.
You're not going to see, I mean, if we're going to have two teams battling for a 9 seed, maybe I'm more interested. But even the 9 seed, you talk about making a run, those
they got to play. They got to turn around and play a 1.
Right,
so,
right.
Yeah.
When you're 11, you can go 6-3. You can make a run that way. So I can see the argument there. Where are you on more games? With the idea being that 11 game probably is about the pinnacle of what we're getting on Tuesday and Wednesday. If they go to 76, we're not going to get better games there.
I don't like the idea, but it's not because of the fact that it would create more games. I don't care. I mean, listen, I love college basketball. You put as many games in front of me as possible. I'll watch as many as I can. Like, it doesn't matter. But I think that the reason that a lot of people are looking to expand the bracket is because of years like last year, where there were so many good teams on the bubble that you're like, how do we tell this team that they're not allowed to be in? How do we cut this team? And I understand that, but then you get years like this year, where if we had 74 teams this year, there'd be a lot of not good teams. Right. There'd be a lot of not good teams.
You'd be working hard to find teams who are worthy.
Exactly. So, I mean, I get how some years it might look good, but there are other years where it doesn't look bad, where it looks terrible. And I would rather bite the bullet on the years that it looks good than have to suffer through the years that it doesn't look good, if that makes sense. The other reason is, like you said, you'd probably have to have like a 14 seed play-in. And I don't like those 14, 15, 16 seeds. Those are usually the team. Most of the time, those are teams that won their conference tournaments.
And that's the only way
they
get in.
And that's the only way they get in. You're not going to see an at-large at a 14 line, or else they're not going to be in. So I get that the 16 seeds have to do the play-in, and it's like, well, yeah, but they play the 1s, and they're not going to ever go on a runs. But a 13, 14, they sometimes do. They have a better chance. I think if you are a team that's good enough, like a team that I'm going to talk about from the Ivy League in a minute here, if you're good enough to win your conference tournament and get yourself a 14 seed, you shouldn't have to do a play-in game. Well, you should just be in the tournament. I don't like the idea of having all of these teams who won their conference tournaments, did what they need to do, now have to do a play-in to even say that they were actually in the tournament.
To be fair, the reason that college basketball wants to do this is not about any of the nice things we talked about. It's about more money.
It's about money.
Yeah, money. And maybe to a slightly lesser degree, more coaches who can say they made the tournament, which helps them and schools and everything else out.
Yeah.
I will say that actually the idea of a conference tournament winner who's a 14 seed, who that's their only path in, I don't mind that as much, because if you go to 76 teams, Tuesday and Wednesday is going to feel as much a part of the tournament as Thursday and Friday is. So you're not, right now you play in the first 4, you kind of feel like you're in the you're not the cool kids part, right? Yeah. You're in the outside. Well, if you're playing, like, let's say they expanded it to like 90, to where Tuesday and Wednesday look exactly like Thursday and Friday, well, then it don't matter. You're in the tournament. That's the tournament. If you're a 14 seed, even in a 76 team field, and you're playing in those days, it doesn't feel as an outsider spot anymore. And you got a pretty good chance to win a tournament game now, which to me, like as a Hofstra fan, I'm excited about Friday with Bama, right? But I know there's a distinct possibility they're going to get rolled by 30. To have a game where that A is almost certainly not going to happen, but B, they might win, that to me is still okay. That's to me the almost the least negative part of this. I just don't like the idea of, you're really expecting, I know you're a college basketball addict, you really expect most people to be committed to, what would it be, 6, 16, 16, 8, and 8. You're talking about 50, 60 games in a week.
It's a lot.
Exactly.
It's a lot. I mean, it's already a lot just as it is. I mean, you've got, like, I remember when I was in high school watching games on Thursday and Friday during class. People work during the day.
That's special.
People work during the day. And it's special when it's just Thursday and Friday. And then when it's the next week and the weekend, with the more that you add, I feel like the less special it gets.
And then to that point, just to hit on it quick before we go to UC this, the NFL going to Thanksgiving Eve potentially. Now, with the NFL, the one thing I'll say is they've been so good at finding money already that the number of spots where they can find more money is becoming smaller and smaller. Like when you've realized 98% of your potential revenue, that last 2%, you got to think way out of the box for it. But the idea of Thanksgiving holiday, NFL, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Sunday, Monday, no thanks. I'm ready to say I've had enough of the NFL at that point.
I think that one's a little bit less extreme because
it's only one game.
It would just be one game,
That's
right?
what I think.
So it's only one game, and with the NFL, like if you're a college basketball fan, or if it's March Madness, you don't people don't put March Madness on in the background and then go do other stuff or hang out with family. No. Like if you're locked in, you're locked in.
Same
but
for
with
the
the
NFL.
NFL, there are some people, but there's also a much larger audience that can just throw the game on during a family holiday party and just kind of hang out.
Unless it's your team.
Unless it's your team.
Which is why I have a big problem with Christmas Day NFL, because you are taking that special holiday and telling those fan
you have
bases,
to choose now.
Exactly.
You have to choose. It's a little bit different with Thanksgiving. I kind of like it when my team plays on Thanksgiving because Thanksgiving's got more of a relaxed kind of chill vibe.
And the other part of it too is a third of the teams are the same every year. So if you're a Detroit and Dallas fan, you know that's just part of the
you're
deal.
playing. Yeah,
right.
it's just part of what you get.
All right, let's move on to You See This, and I'm going to do mine first because I really want to get into this. So there's no video with this one. I got to explain to you what happened. Essentially, the video is there was a fight at a English Premier League game over the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
You've seen a fight in the stands. I don't need to show it to you, okay? Here's where it gets interesting. So the game was Everton and Arsenal. Everton's my team, one of the reasons I noticed this. An Everton player named Thierno Barry apparently invited friends to the game. He got them tickets to sit in the Everton section, because of course you would. Everton fans were the ones that attacked his friends. So a player's fans, his fans, attacked his friends. So the reason this became noted is because there's video. He posted to Instagram and said, this is terrible. Violence has no place in the sport, blah, 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 blah. Well, Everton fans saw the video post and said, they might have been your friends, but they were cheering for Arsenal. And now as the game went, Arsenal won 2-0. They scored 2 goals late. The story from Everton fans was Thierno Barry's friends were laughing and cheering and pointing. And as Everton fans left, they were taking videos. They were doing all kinds of stuff. Now, Barry then reposted on Instagram and said, no, that's not what happened. My friends only cheer for me. They've cheered for me, whatever team I've been on. He listed this team and this team and this team. And they weren't cheering for Arsenal. I would not do that. And let's see, what other notes here? He did say also his friends were approached twice during the game asking who they cheered for. And they said they were cheering for Everton, not Arsenal. So there's 1,000 layers to this, which is why it's fascinating. Number one, do we believe him? Because initially he's like, oh, my buddies got harassed in a game. And then fans were like, well, here's why. And although the violence is not in any way excusable.
Oh, no.
Right. If you are throwing the opposing team's fans into the home and road won't work because the game was actually at Arsenal, into a group of fans from the other team, you're certainly asking for some trouble. So that's question number.
Especially in the English Premier League.
Exactly. And I'll explain why for that in a second too. There's a lot of background to this. Racism is still very much a part of European soccer. Mm-hmm. It's not like Jackie Robinson era. But if you want to continue the analogy, we're probably talking like late 60s in terms of where they're at, maybe mid 70s. The advancement there in soccer in specific is very much behind the times. And it's different behind our times, at least in America. And it's different what country you're in. So the idea that, because Thierno Barry is a black player, if his black friends were attacked and it was just blatant racism, there are reasons to buy that. Mm-hmm. In addition, and again, the violence is inexcusable no matter what way you put it. But like we said, is it reasonable to sit people down who are going to cheer for the opposing team amongst fans who are going to cheer for the home team or for your team? Like, for example, if you had Chiefs fans at Highmark Stadium, which happens all the time, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So if they cheered for their team, I don't think they're going to get beat up. If they're laughing and pointing and creating problems, again, it's not excusable, but you can see where it would happen. Mm-hmm. So,
especially if you sit them. Now, I know with Premier League soccer, they often have like fan sections. Like they have sections like these are the diehard fans. Well, we don't see that in the NFL as much. But let's say you put a Chiefs fan like a couple rows back right behind the Bills sideline, where a lot of Bills fans are. It could definitely get dicey there.
To that point, so I've actually been to this stadium and the Emirates Stadium where Arsenal plays. While the stands itself are not very much separate, like if they have a section that's opposing teams' fans and the home team's fans are just like across the aisle. Like you just walk over and do what you want. But in the concourse, there are giant vault-like doors. There are banks in America that do not protect their money in the same way Arsenal protects home fans from road fans, right? So it is certainly still a concern, the violent stuff that you're trying to protect. And by putting people who cheer for Arsenal in that spot, you are asking for a problem, even if the problem is not defendable. Here's the other thing. Like I said, do we even believe him? Because if his friends were being asked who they were cheering for, I mean, is that random? Or is that because they had some sort of indication that they weren't necessarily cheering for Everton?
Yeah. I mean, if you, especially like you just plop some random people down. Do we have any clue if they were wearing like Everton gear, Arsenal gear? Were they wearing their buddy's jersey? Were they wearing anything?
They were. There have been accusations both ways about it. You can't tell from the video.
Okay. If they were just wearing regular people clothes, I would assume they probably wouldn't get approached unless they were doing something out of the ordinary.
That's what I think too.
So it would make me think that maybe they were cheering for Arsenal. Or I guess if they are really just cheering for their buddy, then it can sometimes get dicey because they might be cheering for something that he did that a regular fan wouldn't really care that much about, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
so it could get confusing maybe in that sense.
I know what you're saying. I don't think it probably happened.
I doubt that part, but yeah.
If Barry did something that was good, that was separate from the outcome of the game, the fans are usually hardcore enough they would notice too.
Yes.
So I don't think you're going to have a fan of this guy cheering for something that the rest of the fans don't notice.
Yes.
And I don't think there's not many things that can happen that would really make sense for there. I also don't think either that they had reached the level that some Everton fans accused them of. Like, I've explained to you kind of how the soccer environment is. I got to imagine his friends know what they're getting into. And
you
to
would hope.
Right.
Especially if they've been following him for a while, like they claim that they have.
Like he says, yeah. So as always, I think the truth lies in the middle. But dissecting this story and peeling back the layers and looking at all the pieces made it really interesting in terms of what should you do. Obviously, again, getting into a fight in the stands, you're not excusing the Everton fans who did that at all. And the violence it's not like just pushing and shoving. It's a legitimate throwing hands kind of thing. But did he put people who are going to root for Arsenal in a bad spot? Did they act poorly? Is he then lying about it? Are all just, like I said, really fascinating questions.
I doubt this played a huge role in it. How old is the player?
Like 19. He's young.
He's 19. So his buddies are probably 19, 20 as well.
Yep.
So I'm just saying, I'm only 21. If I were to go to any sporting event where I don't have a team in this, I don't got a dog in the fight, I'm probably going to root against what the majority of the people around me are rooting just because it's funny.
Right.
Especially if that team's losing. Like you said, Arsenal ended up winning. So especially if like if I just go to a random, let's go Cleveland Browns versus New York Jets.
Right.
I don't know why I picked the two teams that you guys like.
Right.
I don't have a dog in this fight. Let's say the Browns are winning. I'm probably going to root for the Browns. If it's in New York and the Browns are winning, I'm probably rooting for the Browns because the rest of the people around me aren't, and it's just more fun that way.
And if it's in Cleveland, you're
because I'm immature, because I'm young and I'm immature.
This is we need more time to dissect this part of this.
So I think there is a good chance that if they're only 19 or 20, they know where they are. They know what the situation is. They don't got a dog in the fight. They just want to have some fun. And it might have gotten a little out of hand.
Well, and again, you throw a couple beers into there too.
That as well.
One thing to keep in mind in European soccer, you cannot drink in the stands. If you want to get a beer, you have to drink the beer in the concourse, and then
you go back. They still sell them?
Yes, they do. Up until like halftime.
That's wild that they sell beer, but you can't bring it into the stands.
You can't bring it into the stands.
That's crazy. Yeah. I didn't know that.
For a lot of reasons.
It makes sense, but.
All right, let me give you a couple minutes, but you have one too here, which is a very interesting one as well. Go ahead.
Yeah, just sticking with basketball like I always do. March Madness starts soon. Starts on Tuesday technically, but the madness began a while ago with these conference championships. It was the Ivy League championship, Penn against Yale. Yale led by 4 with 12 seconds left. The winner of this game goes to the tournament. Ivy League schools are not getting an at-large. The only way that they go to the tournament is if they win their conference championship. Yale led by 4 with 12 seconds left. TJ Power, number 12 right there, hit a three-pointer, makes it a 1-point game. Penn has to foul. Yale knocks down both of their free throws, so back to a 3-point game. With just 2 seconds left, Power goes up, hits a contested 3, sends it to overtime, and then Penn was able to come out on top in overtime, 88-84. But the big story of the game is TJ Power himself ends with 44 points, 7 for 14 from 3-point line. That's the kind of guy who can help your team make a run in a tournament. You look at tournaments, any sports tournament, and you're like, one player isn't really going to make a difference. But in March Madness, all logic, all common sense gets thrown out the window. One player can be huge. Penn is going to be a 14 seed in the tournament. They're going to have to play 3 seed Illinois in round 1. So that's a really, really tough matchup. But Ivy League schools have won in the first round in 2 of the last 3. Princeton a couple years ago went all the way to the Sweet 16. So we've seen it happen before. And a guy like TJ Power that can drop 44 on a day in any given game, if he does something like that in round 1, look out. Penn could be a bracket buster really early on.
I watched this game, and the thing that impresses me about Power, he's already pretty tall.
Yes.
So he can get his own shot almost whenever he wants to.
Which is exactly what he did on the final shot.
Exactly. And he shoots the ball ridiculously high. Even his free throws are like bouncing off the ceiling.
Yep.
So that kind of arc, coupled with that kind of size, his release is so high that playing bigger guys is not going to bother him. I 100% pick Penn.
Which is exactly what Illinois is. Illinois is built on just being bigger, being stronger. Mm-hmm. And so you would think, okay, well, they're going to body a guy like Power, who's just a guard. I don't know. His play style, they might not be able to.
Very good game on a weekend where the tournament or the conference tournament lived up to the madness.
Definitely.
To me, it was the clash of the weekend. All right, for Caleb Carr, I'm Thad Brown. We're back again on Thursday. Thanks very much for watching the Endgame. We'll see you then.
Get the Rochester First streaming app today for everything you love from News 8 On Demand, plus exclusive shows you won't see anywhere else. Search ROC and download for free on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV.